It's Thursday. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to The Pulse. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We are on your digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air on DSTV channel 421, Go TV channel 144. This is Joy News, independent, fearless, and credible journalism. Coming up this afternoon on the program, minority in Parliament moves to block what it describes as government's forceful attempt to have Parliament approve a 1 billion syndicated loan in spite of ongoing negotiations with the International Monetary Fund. We'll bring you details shortly. Also, Ghana National Education Coalition appeals to aggrieved teacher unions to rescind their industrial action. We'll hear from the group as they warn of dire consequences for final year students if no intervention is made by government. And a little later, we'll take you to the United Kingdom as mixed reactions greet the decision of Boris Johnson to step down as the Prime Minister. My name is Sogah. This is The Pulse. It's brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Remember that this afternoon as well, we're streaming live on all of our social media handles at JoyNews on TV, also on YouTube. Join us with the hashtag The Pulse. It's always a pleasure to host you here on The Pulse. Please stay. Well, so this afternoon, there's some good news for owners of UniCredit over its license revocation by the Bank of Ghana. The Court of Appeal has declared that the decision of the central bank was unlawful, an unlawful exercise in its powers. Now, the three-member panel, presided over by Justice Gabriel Sovereign, actually overturned the revocation of the UniCredit license. Let's get more now from lawyer of the UniCredit organization, lawyer Kwesi Edumante, who joins us on the telephone lines now as we're beginning to learn much more details about this. But thank you, counsel, for your time. First of all, tell us about this. Congratulations to your team, but what's really the implication of the ruling that was delivered by the court today?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Just a slight correction. I'm not lawyer for UniCredit. I'm lawyer for Foda Holdings, shareholder of UniCredit.
Hello, sir. If you could come again on that point, sir.
Yes, I'm saying I'm not lawyer for UniCredit. I'm lawyer for Foda Holdings.
Yes, okay, precisely. Yeah, if we could, we're just looking at the implications of what it is that the court has directed today.
Well, what it means is that we've been taken back to the 15th of August 2019, when UniCredit still had a license to operate. What it means that the revocation that was notice that was issued on the 16th of August 2019 with respect to UniCredit, the court, i.e. UniCredit's license to with UniCredit.
Yeah, so how did you get to this point to secure this judgment that we're getting from the courts?
Well, the Bank of Ghana has power to revoke the license under the bank and special deposit licenses of companies like UniCredit. But then the Act also mandates a procedure for revocation. Now the court, found that the Bank of Ghana didn't follow the procedure, so the revocation was unlawful. So that's the point.
And
you recall that in 2019 issued, we filed an application for the decision because in the view of Foda Holdings, the revocation was unlawful.
Yeah, Councillor, I'm having a little difficulty hearing you clearly on the point you're making, but if you can hear me, let's proceed to the issue about the way forward. We do know that ever since that announcement was made by the Bank of Ghana, a lot has happened. Some takeovers also happened in terms of your assets. The challenge now is about getting all of these things back. What's the way forward in achieving some of these objectives?
Well, the way forward would depend on my client. That would depend on them. They have a number of options, to liaise with the appointed receiver, find out how the roadmap to returning all those assets back to UniCredit, or to liaise with Bank of Ghana, see how best UniCredit can start working, probably from tomorrow.
Right, and we know that you're a lawyer, so you're quite confident with the procedure. Normally, when a judgment is given in this nature, what happens thereafter?
But what happens there after such a judgment? We would have to draw up the judgment and serve it on the other party, as the Bank of Ghana as well. Then they will have to comply with it. If they don't want to comply with it, they know what to either take them appeal the judgment.
And as
now, I don't think they would want to appeal.
Right, and as we speak now, have some of these processes been exhausted already in terms of serving the Bank of Ghana? Or...
No, we just left court literally about 2 hours ago. So we don't even have a copy of the judgment.
So is this also extending, and I mean the judgment extending to the effect on the customers as well, because some of them may have moved to other unions and other fund managers as well. So what's going to be the implication for these customers as well?
Well, like I said, when the license was revoked, a receiver was appointed, and the receiver carried out some duties. So as far as the receiver's duties affected those customers, that would be it. Some customers, as it were, withdrew their funds from UniCredit. Technically, they are no longer accountable.
Right. We need to wrap up.
Unless UniCredit is still, indebted to those customers.
Okay, we need to wrap up, Kwesi, but I just want to find out one more issue about the holdings you represent. There are more issues affecting that group, including the issues relating to Unibank itself. So is this giving you grounds to proceed to demand for further action?
So my instructions were with respect to UniCredit. So I'm able to talk about their dealings.
So you're saying that for now, all you're focusing on is UniCredit, and you're not seeking to go beyond that?
Yes.
All right, then. We're grateful for your time. That's Kwesi Eduante representing UniCredit in that judgment that was just delivered by the court. We'll bring you some more updates as when we have them. But let's talk education now. The Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition is appealing to all striking teachers to resume work immediately, as they warn there may be dire consequences for final year junior high school students who are about to write their final examinations. The coalition, made up of some 200 civil society groups, argues that although the concerns of the teacher unions are legitimate, government and the aggrieved parties ought to ensure that they avert any grave impact on the future of the school children, especially with regard to the shutdown. So let's get more from the national coordinator of the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition, Benis Imperi-Jechi, joining us via Zoom now. Thank you, Benis, for your time. So let's get the concerns clear. Is this to suggest that the teachers did not get the timing right in terms of that decision, which we heard a couple of days ago, for them to embark on the sit-down strike? Is that your assessment of the whole situation?
Yes, please. We were thinking that now that some of the students are in their final year, we thought it prudent that they could have considered the consequences that those children will go through as a result of the strike now, because they are almost at the end of writing their basic exams, and now the teachers are on strike, which is going to affect them so much. It is the reason why we are pleading that the teachers should go back to the classrooms once the negotiation for the increments in their cost of living allowance is being put at the table. We learned that yesterday there was some negotiations that are still ongoing. We are pleading with all the teachers union to let their teachers return to the classroom, especially for those children or pupils who are writing their final basic examination.
Why is this of concern to you, particularly when the teachers say the cost of living has gone up and government would have to act immediately?
We all appreciate that cost of living has gone high so greatly, and it is not only teachers, but everybody every Ghanaian is facing that situation. But we are looking at the state of our finance now. We are not only the teachers to return to the classroom, also pleading with the government that they should put all prudent measures in place to make sure that there is a negotiable cost of living allowance for teachers. And we also believe that there are so much demand looking at the economic situation. We are pleading with the government that they should look at the concerns of the teachers and put measures to address them. Before the strike, we also got to know that some negotiations were done with other key stakeholders, but they were not listened to. This is the reason why the strike has to come in. So if the government and appropriate bodies had listened to the teacher unions, we believe that the strike would have been averted. So we are pleading that the government, as soon as possible or as early as possible, some prudent measures should be put in place to let those teachers go back to the classroom. But still, we are appealing to the teachers. For the interest and the future of this finalists, we are pleading that the teachers should please go back to the classroom.
Is it your argument that even if the teachers go on strike, we know that it's an independent examination body that organizes the examination, all of these candidates may not be successful when they go in to write their BEC?
Yes, please. We are looking at the preparation that has to go on, what the students have to know before they are ready for the examination. That is what is at stake now. Because when it happens like this, parents, guardians, and especially students themselves are disturbed in a way. They may not be able to meet all the curriculum activities before they write their exams. So we are afraid that if it is not attended to as early as possible,
it appears we're having some challenges with your line, but finally, have you commenced any engagements with the teacher unions or perhaps with government just to try and convince all of these parties to come to terms with whatever it is that would allow teaching and learning proceed smoothly? Unfortunately, we're unable to hear what it is that Benes is telling us, but the message is clear. They're coming through from GNEC on the need for the teachers to return to the classrooms. But we know that a meeting between the Employment Ministry and the striking teacher unions ended inconclusively today, with the teachers refusing to call off their strike. Now, government is in the meantime pleading with the striking teachers to return to class. Defense Minister Dominic Nitiwul says there is simply no money.
How are you dealing with that? So as Defense Minister, all our appeal to all these bodies is to say that we've taken the decision to take our program to the IMF. They should give government some bit of time and let's negotiate. They should give government some bit of time and let's talk together. Let's this idea of, I'm going to go on strike, I'm going to do this. The government has all the means, they will give it to you. This government has shown very good faith to everybody that if they have the means, they will do it. They've never disrespected workers. They've never shouted on workers. They've negotiated with workers on good faith. I plead with them that they should give government the opportunity to negotiate with them in good faith. Can you imagine you are leading an IMF team and workers are asking for maybe between 6 to 8 billion extra income or extra expenditure on the budget? It makes your work very, very difficult. I just plead that yes, things are difficult. We all accept. It's not the fault of a worker that maybe if he was earning 3,000 Ghana cedis yesterday, that 3,000 may buy less things. But like I said, let's plead with everybody to give government the opportunity to negotiate very well with them. But I really, really worry that whatever we do, we should look at our kids and ensure that we don't leave a country where tomorrow those kids will find Ghana a different place. We've managed ourselves very well up to now. We will continue to do whatever we have to do. And I'll give Ghanaians a promise. We'll continue to do whatever we have to do to keep this country very safe. Extremely very, very safe. But it will also depend on how they help us including all of us, how we behave, what we do, what we eat, our demands, our tastes, everything.
Let's take you to Parliament now. The minority there says it will resist any attempts by government to approve a $1 billion syndicated loan currently before the House. Now, government is seeking to raise some $750 million from the Afro-Exim Bank and $250 million from a syndication of banks to finance the 2022 budget. Speaking exclusively to JoyNews in Parliament, member of the Finance Committee of the House, John Jinapo, said if the loan is approved, government will pay up to $50 million as insurance alone and 200 on that 250 million deal, and a similar amount of some 750 million.
All that we are currently going through an IMF program, despite insistence from government that we're not going for an IMF program. They've just announced that we are going for an IMF program because we have challenges with balance of support. The economy is on life support. The economy is facing serious challenges. And so even before the IMF engagement commences, government has just brought two agreements for a syndicated loan of $1 billion, $250 million and $750 million. And when you look at the terms of the loan, it's mind-boggling. It's most unfortunate. Firstly, we would have thought that Parliament would have been briefed on the state of the economy. We would have thought that through the IMF engagement, we'll get to know the true state of the economy before we even begin to talk about borrowing. Because this same reckless borrowing and expenditure that has brought us to this quagmire. When you look at the facility, firstly, it's omnibus. All they say is that it's for budgetary support. You don't know exactly what the amount is going to do. But when you even look at the details, some of the facility, especially the 250, we're going to pay almost $50 million as insurance, and then pay about a 1.75 as arrangement or agency fee. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you be paying such a whopping amount on such a figure? What is so special about it that you pay all this amount? Ghana is a sovereign state, and as a sovereign nation, one would have thought that we won't be paying all this amount. We are also surrendering some of our assets, including our rights. We are making a lot of waivers. The British High Commission, the Ghana High Commission in Britain, is being asked to waive even our rights in terms of immunity. This is most unfortunate. And worst of all, President Akufo-Addo and Mr. Kinoforeka wants to borrow this money, spend it today, but the repayment would be when they have left office. Already we've done that with the IMF facility. In 2025, Ghana would have to look for extra 11 billion cedis or more in terms of repayment of loans. So when you add this, obviously in 2025, this economy is going to crash.
According to John Jinapo, the minority will do everything within their power to ensure that they resist this loan.
I think that both majority and minority side should do the needful and ask the minister to withdraw this request. Let's go through all the processes, look at the true state of the economy, why we are in this mess, what we ought to be borrowing, and exactly where we are applying those funds. Given the current circumstance and given what they've given us, it's so opaque, it's not transparent, it doesn't stand the test of time. And I hope that MPs from both sides would put the nation first for the first time and do the needful by rejecting this request.
Finally, I just actually checked another part. It says the provision of the paper tomorrow says they will use this nation tomorrow. And I wanted to know if the finance committee had met on it or whether they were expecting to meet on it this evening, take a decision, and then take a decision in the House tomorrow and approving it tomorrow. It seems like this is quite rushed.
Once again, they are trying to rush this. You would recall that e-levy, we cautioned them, they did not listen. Vehicle levies, we cautioned them, they did not listen. A lot of taxes and programs or policies that government has brought here that we've cautioned them, which they bulldoze their way through, they've always hit a wall. Why would you even want to table this before the House when we haven't even sat as a committee? We haven't even looked at it. The committee hasn't even sat to listen to the Minister of Finance, and yet you've tabled it for tomorrow. Why the rush? Why wouldn't this government listen once and for all? Why wouldn't this government put the nation first once and for all? And like President Mahama said, why won't you take your time? Why are you rushing? This deal is inimical. It is not good. It is not proper. It's not fit for purpose. And we must insist that it is withdrawn and the right thing done before we even think of considering it.
And we do know that it's day 2 of Ghana's crunch talks with the International Monetary Fund. Top officials from the Global Financial Organization and the Finance Minister are focusing on Ghana's expenditure data, inflation and debt reconciliation, among others. This forms part of government's push to get the support to put the economy back on track. Joining me now is Isaac Kofi, data analyst with the Joy research team. Kofi, first of all, walk us through the key areas that will be the focus of today. Kofi, you'd have to unmute so we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So 2 key things government will be looking at. First, data gathering and reconciliation. And then second will be revenue, which is very important. On the side of data gathering and reconciliation, 2 things will be involved, which is domestic, desktop, which looking at the domestic aspects and then the foreign aspects too. So just looking at summary data from the Bank of Ghana, you can see that Ghana's current debt stock is around 391.9 billion Ghana cedis. And if you segregate this, domestic portion is around 189.9 billion cedis, and the foreign component being the biggest, 201.9 billion Ghana cedis. Now, we also did some breakdown. You could see that since the beginning of the year, or if you like, since December 2021 to March 2022, our total public debt stock has risen by 11.4%. The external component has also gone up by 18.8%, while the domestic portion has gone up by 4.3%. Now, Blaise, we'll also be looking at the revenue aspect, where government will be considering the first quarter fiscal outturn for 2022 this year. They'll also be going heavy on the e-levy and then also reversal of the benchmark, value, and also updates on the implementation of other, tax measures, especially property tax and then e-commerce taxation and also tax exemption. Now, if you remember, Ghana loses close to $2.4 billion. This according to the president when he gave the State of the Nation address to tax exemption. This means that this will be one key area that government will actually look at critically when it comes to their negotiation with the IMF. And also that's more, the amounts we are seeking from the IMF as bailouts and what we even going as COVID-19, expenses. So I'm just comparing the $2.4 billion that we lose as tax exemption. If you compare it to what we receive from COVID-19 support and what we are even looking for from the IMF, which is 1.5 billion dollars, is more, than what we are looking for.
Right, but there are also other key sectors that the focus will be put on, which has got to do with, for instance, the cocoa sector and petroleum as well. Talk to us about that.
Very important sectors, because these 2 sectors bring in foreign currency. And it's very important to look at those things, because one thing Ghana is seeking to solve is our balance of payments, problems that we are actually encountering now. So if you look at the summary data again, what we are getting from cocoa this first quarter has been dropping. So it should be something government should be looking at, because falling commodity prices is also affecting our external reserves, and it's making it to deplete. And so government will be looking at some of the commodities that bring in foreign exchange, like cocoa. Gold has been doing well in the first quarter, but critical, just like you said, cocoa is dropping in terms of the revenue is bringing in terms of foreign currency. So it's one key area governments will be looking at as to how to improve upon it and also increase the revenue generation.
But the fear is, for instance, if you take a look at the petroleum sector, part of our funding for the free senior high school policy as a nation, there's some sort of a link to petroleum funds as well. So if the IMF is going to look into that, is there any possible implication for the program?
Well, the program, as they have said, is from the Heritage Fund and other sources. But government is clear that one thing they are not going to touch going to the negotiation with IMF is the free SHS. So we are still hoping that government will actually stick with what they've said. But I am of the view that since they've actually said in the Q&A they released this week, that is a no-go area in the negotiation, that they will still maintain the free SHS, although it has a lot of, it's putting a lot of weight on government expenditure. They feel it's a policy that they can't terminate.
And what would be the alternative around that? Other forms of subsidy to focus on?
Probably one thing government will have to go in heavy on will be tax exemption. Just like I said, we lose close to $2.4 billion as a result of tax exemption. And this is more than what we are even seeking from the IMF, which is 1.5 billion cedis. So it's one key area that governments will be looking at critically when it comes to tax exemptions, because it's very important. It brings in foreign currencies, and you can't be losing as high as 2.4 billion cedis every year to tax exemptions.
What about the further engagements? We understand that right from tomorrow, there may be some more technical engagements, for instance, with the Bank of Ghana. Tell us about that as well.
Well, engagement with Bank of Ghana is really important because they are in charge of our, international reserve, and it's just like I said, it's one key reason why we are seeking for this what government says is their enhanced domestic program. But like I was saying yesterday, this will be the first time that government will be going in for a hybrid program, in the sense that we'll be combining two IMF products to actually arrive at one program. And Benin has already done it, and Ghana believes that we will qualify for this program. So it means that you need, all stakeholders to be on board for you to qualify for this high combined, fiscal exposure that government of Ghana feels that they may qualify for this time around.
Isaac, we'll have to leave it here for now, but I'm grateful for your time. And thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. When we return, we'll talk about the UK Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. His step down will bring you updates. And you're welcome back. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced his resignation as Conservative Party leader following a wave of government resignations. He came under pressure by his handling of the case of a senior official accused of a sexual misconduct. As recently as last night, Mr. Johnson said he intended to stay and fight, but the avalanche of resignations from government ministers continued through this morning with a letter after criticizing him, indicating that he was going to step down. Now, let's cross over live to my colleague Daniel Dassey, who is in the UK, to get some reactions, of course, to get more on this. Daniel, thank you for your time. So what's the latest as we speak? We saw that speech from the Prime Minister himself explaining reasons accounting for his decision to step down. But are we letting off some more details now?
Body, good afternoon. Thank you. It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister. And I've agreed with Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of our backbench MPs, that the process of choosing that new leader should begin now. And the timetable will be announced next week. And I've today appointed a cabinet to serve, as I will, until a new leader is in place. So I want to say to the millions of people who voted for us in 2019, many of them voting Conservative for the first time, thank you for that incredible mandate, the biggest Conservative majority since 1987, the biggest share of the vote since 1979. And the reason I have fought so hard in the last few days to continue to deliver that mandate in person was not just because I wanted to do so, but because I felt it was my job, my duty, my obligation to you to continue to do what we promised in 2019. And of course, I'm immensely proud of the achievements of this government, from getting Brexit done to settling our relations with the continent for over half a century, reclaiming the power for this country to make its own laws in Parliament, getting us all through the pandemic, delivering the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, the fastest exit from lockdown, and in the last few months, leading the West in standing up to Putin's aggression in Ukraine. And let me say now to the people of Ukraine that I know that we in the UK will continue to back your fight for freedom for as long as it takes. And at the same time, in this country, we've been pushing forward a vast program of investment in infrastructure and skills and technology, the biggest in a century, because if I have one insight into human beings, it is that genius and talent and enthusiasm and imagination are evenly distributed throughout the population, but opportunity is not. And that's why we must keep levelling up, keep unleashing the potential of every part of the United Kingdom. And if we can do that in this country, we will be the most prosperous in Europe. And in the last few days, I've tried to persuade my colleagues that it would be eccentric to change governments when we're delivering so much, and when we have such a vast mandate, and when we're actually only a handful of points behind in the polls, even in mid-term after quite a few months of pretty relentless sledging, and when the economic scene is so difficult domestically and internationally. And I regret not to have been successful in those arguments, and of course it's painful not to be able to see through so many ideas and projects myself. But as we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable. And our brilliant and Darwinian system will produce another leader equally committed to taking this country forward through tough times, not just helping families to get through it, but changing and improving the way we do things, cutting burdens on businesses and families, and yes, cutting taxes, because that is the way to generate the growth and the income we need to pay for great public services. And to that new leader, I say, whoever he or she may be, I say I will give you as much support as I can. And to you, the British public, I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am to be giving up the best job in the world. But them's the breaks. I want to thank Carrie and our children and all the members of my family who have had to put up with so much for so long. I want to thank the peerless British civil service for all the help and support that you have given our police, our emergency services, and of course our fantastic NHS, who at critical moment helped to extend my own period in office, as well as our armed services and our agencies that are so admired around the world, and our indefatigable Conservative Party members and supporters, whose selfless campaigning makes our democracy possible. I want to thank the wonderful staff here at Chequers, here at Number 10, and of course at Chequers, and our fantastic prop force detectives, the one group, by the way, who never leak. Above all, I want to thank you, the British public, for the immense privilege that you have given me. And I want you to know that from now on, until the new Prime Minister is in place, your interests will be served and the government of the country will be carried on. Being Prime Minister is an education in itself. I've travelled to every part of the United Kingdom, and in addition to the beauty of our natural world, I found so many people possessed of such boundless British originality and so willing to tackle old problems in new ways, that I know that even if things can sometimes seem dark now, our future together is golden. Thank you all very much.
Let's gauge the mood now in the UK. Joining us now is Daniel Datse. Daniel, what are some of the reactions, especially from the African community? Daniel, you would have to unmute so we can hear you.
Pardon me. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
The reactions have been mixed, largely from the African community and the Ghanaians in particular. Those who are conservatives look at this as an exit of Boris Johnson and not as an exit of the Conservative Party. That's the first thing. What we need to understand is that, as we have reported, the Prime Minister is resigning as party leader, which would mean that the Conservative Party will appoint a new leader, and then that leader is expected to take over as Prime Minister. Whether or not that leader calls for a general election, which could result in a change of party or change of political ideal leading a country, that's another thing. It's up to the Prime Minister, basically. But the reaction generally has been a welcome one to this particular announcement. And already there are polls coming up as to who could take over as party leader. There are questions being asked as to whether or not Mr. Johnson can even put together a government in the interim that would properly shepherd the country's affairs, considering the fact that a number of his ministers resigned in the lead up to this. And even though he has a new cabinet, he still doesn't have a number of junior ministers who help government to run.
So walk us through that process. At least we know that the announcement has been made now, but it's likely to take effect next week. So what are we expecting?
What we're expecting next week is a timetable for the election of the new Conservative Party leader. That will start when names are put forward. The first round of votes will be for people to get at least 5% of the number of Conservative MPs in Parliament. After that, then those who don't get up to 5%, which currently is at, I think, 8 votes, will drop out. Then we go to a next stage. Those who don't get 10% will drop out, and then that's 16 seats. And then the process goes on like that until we come to 2 people. That is when we will have the entire Conservative Party in the country voting to select who the leader of the party will be. That process is expected to start sometime after the timetable is announced, and it's expected to come to a conclusion latest by October, which will be the final time that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, will remain as the leader of the country. In the meantime, he's already had an interim meeting with his cabinet. We've had his transport secretary, who is his interim transport secretary, has actually announced that he would like to run as party leader. And we are gauging to see whether or not he can do anything substantial, or he will just be a caretaker, or he cannot even hold on as he is required. Already, the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, has indicated before Mr. Johnson announced that he will be resigning, the Labour leader had already indicated that he would like to trigger another vote of confidence in Parliament, but that will require a good number of Conservative MPs to vote against Mr. Johnson so that his government would end immediately. And we don't know if that's going to happen, but it's definitely an interesting couple of days and weeks coming up.
Are there some likely candidates that are putting themselves up already?
Yes, like I said, actually, even before Mr. Johnson announced that he will be resigning, Suella Braverman, his Attorney General, had already announced that she will be running for party leader. So she's expected to be one of the people who would throw their hat in the ring. I'm currently looking at a YouGov poll, which was quickly put up online for people to select who they think would be the next Conservative Party leader. Number 1 is the Defense Secretary, Ben Wallace. He's leading by 13%. Penny Mordaunt is 12%. Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, or the Finance Minister, who is one of the people who resigned a few days ago, in the past few days, I should say, is also enjoying some support. Liz Truss, his Foreign Secretary, Michael Gove, Dominic Raab. All of these are key names in Mr. Johnson's government or in the Conservative Party. And all of these people stand the chance. Now, we could look at all of these guys individually to see what their chances are.
Yeah, even before we look at their profiles, I guess the concern is also about what the polls are saying.
Yes. And currently the polls, of course, it's a very initial poll, but it has Ben Wallace as the leader, defense secretary. Of course, his decisions about sending arms to Ukraine almost immediately after that Vladimir Putin attacked Ukraine has really put him in the lead. He's been seen as a very decisive person. It also gives a mindset as to the kind of issues that people will be looking at when they're trying to select their key leader. If you look at someone like Rishi Sunak, for instance, he was a very popular person when he was giving aid during the lockdowns, during the COVID, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. But there was some controversy around his wife's taxes, and he's also one of the ministers who was fined for attending those lockdown parties with Boris Johnson. That is definitely going to hurt his reputation. You have some people like Sajid Javid, who was his health minister, who also did very well during the lockdown era. But he is polling at around 4% in this poll currently. You have Michael Gove, who is, people are asking that Michael Gove actually steps in because he is a deputy prime minister currently, and he steps in to shepherd the government until a new leader is selected. But it's still very, very early days. It's just that if you look at the top 3 or 4 names, it looks like the people are going to look at issues like decisive leadership, what has been done during the Ukraine crisis, what has been done during the COVID crisis, who the British people believe can shepherd the country out of the current economic situation that is being faced. Because remember, there's currently what can be described as a cost of living crisis. National insurance taxes have gone up. Inflation is at 9.1%. It's very high. And currently there are a lot of issues that the British public are dealing with that any leader of the Conservative Party will need to address decisively. There's also the matter of if a Conservative leader is able to hold on to government, a new Conservative leader is able to hold on to power, or he would have to call a general election to make things more firm. So definitely an interesting couple of months coming up, Blessed.
Daniel, let's stay a bit more on this. McMurtry is a senior constitutional law lecturer at the University of Buckingham and has taught public law for the past 30 years. Thank you, Sheena, for your time. So why has there been pressure on the Prime Minister to resign ever since?
There's been a number of incidents. The one most recently, obviously, has been the incident with Chris Pincher, one of the government chief whips. Not the chief whip, but one of the government whips. The allegation was that the Prime Minister knew more about previous conduct and had not been absolutely upfront, shall we say, with that information, and had actually asked his ministers to go out and defend his position, to say that he had been unaware of any official complaints. I think that's probably the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. It's got a certain ring to it with Owen Paterson a little while back, where the Prime Minister Boris Johnson had asked Parliament to block Owen Paterson, an MP's suspension, and that was done. But the next day, the Prime Minister said that he changed his mind on that. And I think a lot of people had gone out and supported the Prime Minister's view one point, and then he changed his mind. Obviously, the other thing is Partygate, and whether or not there would have been a finding by Parliamentary Committee in the autumn that Boris Johnson had misled Parliament when he said that he had no knowledge of any parties at 10 Downing Street during the COVID lockdown, right. But then, of course, has received a fine for attending such a party, and is in fact the first British Prime Minister to receive a criminal penalty.
And how about the resignations and its impact on the government itself?
There's two things there with the resignations. The first one is, if you like, more the constitutional side, which is the government is supposed to be a collective government, a cabinet government. And the more people who actually leave and resign from that cabinet government or from the lower ranks of the government, it does tend to suggest that there is not that collective unity in the government, which makes it increasingly difficult for the Prime Minister to head that government as first among equals. The second thing is obviously much more practical. How do you fill 50 odd vacancies very quickly from other Conservative MPs? It's meant that certain government business in relation to legislation in Parliament has come to a halt because there is no minister there to speak to the legislation going through committees. So there's a practical and constitutional aspect to this.
So let's talk about the implication, not just for Homeland, but also issues of foreign policy. What will the resignation mean for some of these areas as well?
At the moment, the Prime Minister obviously is going to continue as Prime Minister. He's simply resigned as the leader of the Conservative Party, which triggers the leadership election. But for the next few months, he will be a Prime Minister and remain the Prime Minister, I think, until the beginning of the autumn. Obviously, he will carry on business as usual, as best he can. But what it does mean is that some people might sort of feel that he's not quite a lame duck, but, you know, what is his successor going to do? So if I make any agreements or he makes any pronouncements at the moment, is that guaranteed that his successor will continue with that policy? So it should be business as usual, but with a slight caveat that some people might be looking a little bit further ahead to who the new leader will be and will they carry out the same policies, particularly internationally, as Boris Johnson. I think it's fairly clear that in the likes of the situation in Ukraine, etc., nothing will change.
Right, but now that you're explaining the legal implications as well to us, there is the issue about the effect of it. We know that the Prime Minister has announced that he's resigning, but then the process will kickstart next week. Can the Prime Minister, for instance, call an election? Is that what's likely to happen?
He can. The situation has fluctuated in the UK in the last 10 years. Up until fairly recently, he did not have that power anymore. It was up to Parliament. But the Fixed Term Parliaments Act of 2011 was repealed. And we now have the situation has gone back to prior to 2011. And yes, he could go to the Queen and he could request that she dissolves Parliament and therefore effectively calls an election, a general election. He could do that, but whether or not he would feel that that was in any way beneficial to him or to the Conservative Party in the current political climate. Right. And then there would be, secondly, the question of whether or not he would actually want to place the Queen in that position of having to sort of effectively call an election because the Prime Minister has asked her to do so. Legally, that is the position, but politically, that might not be seen to be a particularly good move by a Conservative Prime Minister.
Well, that was largely a hypothetical question, but let's talk about the reality now, the issue about how a new Prime Minister could be chosen. What's the constitutional requirement?
It's a little bit generous to call it the constitutional requirement, particularly in the UK, not having a written or codified constitution as such. So we have to sort of look at various aspects. What is happening at the moment is the Prime Minister will continue as Prime Minister. There will then, because he has resigned as leader of the Conservative Party, he has triggered an internal election process within the Conservative Party. So they will now have a ballot amongst the Conservative MPs, and then it will be put to the Conservative Party members nationwide who are actually paid up members of the Conservative Party. And by that process, they will choose a new leader. At that point, Boris Johnson will then resign also as Prime Minister, advising the Queen to appoint the new leader of the Conservative Party as Prime Minister.
But looking at that process, is this a common feature of your parliamentary system, and does it not threaten, for instance, the stability of the state?
It has become a little bit more of a common feature. It's always, the potential has always been there. In the last 20 years or so, it has happened quite frequently. We've had this change of Prime Minister mid-term without a general election. So we had Gordon Brown taking over from Tony Blair, we had Theresa May taking over from David Cameron. Ironically, we had Boris Johnson taking over from Theresa May, all initially without an election. It's something that our system allows to happen. I think there are two viewpoints here. Undoubtedly, many people will feel that it's in some way undemocratic because they don't get to have a say immediately in who the new Prime Minister will be. They will have to wait for that general election, whenever that might be called. Other people would say that this is actually quite a strength of the UK system because it does mean that you don't have an ineffectual Prime Minister or a lame duck Prime Minister who's lost the confidence of the Cabinet but has to keep going because there's no exit strategy. So in that situation, people see it as a really rather efficient political way of getting rid of a Prime Minister who is not meeting his party's or her party's requirements. So there's two schools of thought on that.
Anyway, we'll keep our eyes on developments. But for now, Sheena McMurtry, I'm grateful for your time.
Thank you very much.
Let's go back to Daniel Dazi, also keeping an eye on the reactions that are coming through. Daniel, so we had the breakdown there, the constitutional implications, and what we're on the lookout for is some of the speeches that may follow up from the colleagues of Boris Johnson as well, including the other side of the aisle. What are we hearing so far?
Well, what we have immediately, Blessed, is that Boris Johnson in the past few minutes has put out a tweet. He has said that government will carry on until a successor is chosen, basically reiterating what he said during his speech earlier. I had wanted to make a quick, I think I was speaking a bit quickly earlier. I mentioned, I gave the name of Michael Gove as the Deputy Prime Minister. It's actually Dominic Raab, who is Deputy Prime Minister currently. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's the curiosity really would be how effective Boris can be as a prime minister until the time is gone. I know that, and it was something that I was curious to hear. I would have been curious to hear Sheena address because I know that David Cameron held on to power until his successor was chosen. So did Theresa May. And so it's a bit unclear currently what a prime minister can do. It's a very sensitive time currently in the UK. People are asking for taxes to be lowered. You're talking about this policy of sending people who do not get asylum to Rwanda. It's currently being chased in court. It's something that is really being pushed by the government currently. Whether that can change or whether that can be held on, even if the British people do not want that, how the economics will play out, how the relation with territories like Africa will play out, relations with places like Ghana. We know that Boris Johnson first visited Ghana as a foreign minister when Theresa May was prime minister. His positions have not really changed over the years, but if that would be beneficial to him now, if that's an option that he can take. So it's definitely a lot that we have to look at. I also think that it's time for, this is a key time that our government in Ghana must begin to rethink if there's any advantage that can be drawn from this, whether there are any allies that can be made in the new government, or whether our foreign policy and our trade policy can be looked at. There were issues about immigration, like I was saying, a lot of Ghanaians have asked questions about that. Lots of Ghanaians have asked questions about trade. Lots of Ghanaians have asked questions about the visa policies. These are things that must immediately be addressed. These are reactions that the Ghanaian government must immediately begin to look at. And we'll be very curious to see how they develop over the next few months.
Daniel Dazi giving us the latest from the UK. I'm grateful. Here in Ghana as well, former Power Minister Kwabena Donkor is asking Finance Minister to emulate Boris Johnson and resign immediately. There's pressure mounting on Ken Ofori-Atta to resign following Ghana's decision to seek an IMF bailout. According to Kwabena Donkor, it's clear that the president may not be able to sack Ken Ofori-Atta because of the political reasons, but he should do the honorable thing and step aside.
Well, I wouldn't say the president should dismiss him in the first instance. I will say the minister should resign as a matter of honor. I know Ken Ofori-Atta personally, and I've known him before he became the Minister for Finance. He's achieved a lot in the private sector. And in the public arena, he's given his best. But his best has not been enough, as we all can attest to. And therefore, I believe it is a matter of honor for him to resign, for a new team to start the negotiations with the IMF and to chart a new course. I sincerely believe he's done his best, and everybody knows his best has not been enough. There may be extenuating circumstances, they may be. However, you take responsibility. He's the Minister of Finance. A few months ago, he categorically stated that we'll never go to the IMF, we'll never go to the fund. We are capable of managing our own affairs. We are capable of swimming through the turbulence. And today, as a nation, we've had to eat humble pie. At least, at the very minimum, the Minister for Finance, who is the operational director of the economic management team, who is at the center. Yes, there is a head, but the head is a titular head. But the Ministry of Finance sits right in the middle of the whirlwind. He must, as a matter of principle and as a matter of honor, and also of dignity, offer to resign and give the president the opportunity to appoint someone.
The Member of Parliament is also threatening that Parliament will be forced to pass a motion of censure against Ken Ofori-Atta to remove him if it does not step aside. He is confident the majority side will support them.
The president's hands may be tied. May be tied. I'm not saying that his hands are tied, but I'm saying his hands may be tied. And therefore, others will have to do to free the president, do the desirable for him. And I sincerely think, in the interest of the country, in the interest of the party, in the interest of the government and governance, we must have some principles. You've done your best. Let's say the elements have been against you. Let's even say the elements have been against you. Step aside. Let somebody else come and handle the situation. This is not a personal asset. Neither is it some PLC. This is Ghana. This is the Republic of Ghana. We may always have our wishes, but we don't always get what we want in life. Fortunately, the Constitution makes room for him to be removed. The Constitution provides for a censure motion. And if all fails, you see, Parliament is the embodiment of the faith of the Ghanaian people. Parliament will be delinquent on its responsibility if, when the push comes, if we have to push and we acquiesce, we will have let the people of Ghana down.
Let's focus on security. The Ghana Police Service has published education notices on handling special events on the back of violent scenes witnessed at the recent demonstration by Arise Ghana. The aim is to inform citizens on the rights and responsibilities assigned to organizers and demonstrators. It is also to guide their conduct during such events in order to avoid security breaches while spelling out the role of the police in such events. However, the notice has been greeted with a sharp response from organizers of the Arise Ghana demonstration. The group believes that the police intends to smear its image. Samuel Mbura looks at the issue at hand. But let's first of all speak to some of the campaigners. Rex Omar is one of them, joins us now via Zoom. Thanks for your time here on the poll. So why are you concerned about a simple education campaign being organized by the Ghana Police Service? Rex, if you can hear me, kindly unmute. I'm just asking about why you're concerned and alarmed over this education drive that the police service is
added our name, and then they seem to paint us in a very undesirable picture as if we are some unlawful people or violent people, because this is not the first time and a demonstration or with police brutalities. I mean, we all remember Ayawa's West Oregon and all other stuff. Whatever happened in our day one of our demonstration, the fault is not ours. And for you to know that the fault is not ours, when the police decided to now stop listening to the political hidden fingers, and they started to be as professional as we know them to be, the second day came out very, very nicely and peacefully. So I don't understand why, if you want to do your education, why do you mention Arise Ghana as the reason why you are doing
that? Yeah, but you agree that day one did not go well. So that could be an instance where the police service could leverage on to educate the public.
Day one did not go well, and the fault is not ours, the fault is the police. So if the police want to educate, they should educate themselves as to why and how they should stop listening to the hidden fingers and do their professional work.
Yeah, but Rex, I'm not sure if you know the full details of what this education campaign may involve.
They shouldn't have started only our demonstration. They should have started other demonstrations that didn't go well.
Do you agree that day one did not go well? Do you agree with that?
It did not go well, but it's not fault of ours.
Yeah, but it was still violent anyway.
It went violent. Both the police and the demonstrators went violent. So why we can also start to do our education and use the police as blah blah blah. They should have, if they want to do the education, go ahead and do the education. Don't cite Arise Ghana and make it look like we are some violent people. We are not. We are law-abiding citizens.
Which part of the police statement, for instance, refers to your group as a violent group? They never did that in the statement, did they?
Please, the statement that came, if you read the paragraph 1, Arise Ghana's name is there. I don't know which one you are referring to.
Yeah, but I'm asking if the police service stated clearly in their statement that your group was violent. They never said that.
No, they never said categorically that we are violent, but they used our demonstration as an instance. And I'm saying that why shouldn't they also have used other demonstrations that went violent?
But that's to the discretion of the Ghana Police Service, you agree?
And that is why we are also rebutting, so that they shouldn't use us and paint a picture as if we are a violent group. That is why we've come out to let them know, let everybody know that whatever has gone wrong was not our fault, that's not our nature. So police shouldn't use that because of our demonstration. That's why they are coming to do the so-called education. Why haven't they done the education long ago? When Ayawasu West Oregon happened, why didn't they come out to do education?
Rex, let me ask you about your personal reflections on the Arise Ghana demonstration you organized. That you want to describe it as a success entirely?
Yes, it is. It was a success. The day one, what happened from the day one, people wouldn't have even come for day two. But day two was far much more successful, and people came out in their numbers because, I mean, we engaged the police a month before this demonstration. We did everything in our power to have a peaceful demonstration. And for some reason, the police made some case of difficulties for us. The very place we wanted to go, the very route that we agreed with them that they did not allow us to go on day one, that created a problem. The same place, we went the day two with them, and it went well. We have agreed with you on the route and everything. 24 hours before the demonstration, you hide behind us to go to court to seek injunction to stop the demonstration. Then court did not allow you. Court ruled that the demonstration must go on, but then changed our route. And we say, no, the route you are giving us has no bearing on our demonstration. So we actually appealed and filed stay of execution, and we served you, the police. In the morning of the demonstration, police invited us. Why did they invite us? To discuss the route. And we said, okay, if it's the Jubilee House you don't want us to go, we will not go there. Let us still use our route and through the Akwaje go to ministry. You said no. You are calling somebody. After calling somebody, you said no, you are not allowed us. And this is what created all this problem. The second day, the very place you say you didn't want us to go, that is what we went, because that is what we agreed with you previously, and everything went on well. So if something has gone wrong, they should also accept some of the responsibility and stop using us as if we are violent and we blah, 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 and then that's why they are coming to do education. Education is okay for everybody, but don't cite Arise Ghana as the reason why you want to do your education.
If the police service intends to or sends that invite to engage leadership of your group or perhaps members of the Arise Ghana movement, will you avail yourselves?
That is a rhetorical question. I mean, they haven't invited us, but if they invite us to, we are not peace officers, they are peace officers, so they have the mandate to.
It appears that from the way you're sounding, there's more up your sleeves. You're likely to hit the streets in the coming days again.
Is that illegal? No. The only constitutional right we have to express our displeasure is demonstration. So we have submitted our petition to Parliament and to the Minister of Finance. We gave them 2 weeks. We are waiting to hear from them. If we don't hear from them, we will continue.
And this time around, I'm interested in finding out when next you'll be going.
When the time comes, we will do our press conference, and the whole nation will know our next course of action.
But it's certain to happen, as you're telling us.
If the government moves, we are following the steps. As I said, we've submitted our grievances, and we are waiting to hear from them.
All right then, Rex Omar, thank you so much for your time here on The Pulse. Well, let's talk about some more developments in Parliament. Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah has told Parliament that the inability of media houses to pay their journalists, that's a major cause of the decline in Ghana's press freedom index. Has been giving some updates on that. The latest report from the Reporters Without Borders has actually generated some considerable conversation, with some blaming state agencies and their attacks on journalists as the cause of the slump. But Kojo Nkrumah says the ministry did an analysis with some industry stakeholders on the report and found out that poor remuneration played a key factor in the decline. He referenced the recent media reports that some media houses are not paying their journalists as a matter of concern.
We will not subscribe to a certification of journalists. We subscribe to a view that says, let the stakeholders in the industry themselves identify the capacity gaps, design curriculum to close those gaps, and let the broader society help to fund participants for that training. And that's exactly what we are doing in the Media Capacity Enhancement Program. As I mentioned, already 58 persons have gone through it. By the end of this year, we expect that 250 practicing journalists would have benefited from this program. Mr. Speaker, it's also important to mention that this training is not run by the Ministry of Information as was initially put in the public domain. The job of the Ministry of Information has been to provide policy leadership in this space and funding. and try to mobilize funding to support this training program that was designed and is being implemented by the independent working group of stakeholders in the industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Kojobo Nkrumah also maintained that government is committed to ensuring the safety of journalists and has enacted some coordinated mechanisms to ensure that.
I called a meeting of the key stakeholders in the sector at the Ministry of Information earlier this month to jointly peruse and analyze the report. The Speaker, when we're done with that analysis, and this had the various media stakeholders, including some of which I have mentioned earlier, when we're done, it became obvious that according to the 5 parameters assessed under the new methodology, Ghana scored very high in terms of the legal framework, 81.42%, the social-cultural context, 79.64%. Ghana also recorded above average and moderately high scores for political context, that is 66.61%, and security of journalists, 62.25%. Security of journalists, 62.25%. The only parameter in which Ghana performed below average, which dragged us very heavily on the composite score, was the economic context, 47.22%. And by economic context, RFS refers to the poverty of individual journalists and media houses. And the facts are clear in this country that because we have opened up the media landscape extensively, which is a very good thing, a number of media houses have sprung up, a good chunk of which struggle to make ends meet. Indeed, I think even this week you will find reports in some of the media or on some of the media platforms about media houses struggling to pay salaries. And the RFS contends that when journalists are not paid, the ability to do a sacrosanct free job is questionable. And they score us very, very low on that. When media houses are not able to make ends meet, the ability to do independent and sacrosanct journalism sometimes is brought into question.
Some are in Europe, and another one of high temperatures and drought. The likely effects of climate change are leading to water restrictions, agricultural problems, and dangerous heat exposure. Let's get more of the risk Europe faces from reporter William Bluecroft, who is with our partners, Deutsche Welle, joining us live from Berlin. So William, first of all, what are some of the worst effects countries are experiencing?
Well, let's start right here in Berlin. I have been living here for years. I cannot remember a summer where there have been so many days above 30 degrees, where you don't have to go out at night with a jacket. You can keep your shorts on all day. This is not conditions that are typical for Berlin, for Germany, for Europe overall, really. And the data really support what I'm personally feeling, what many of us are personally feeling, that temperatures are at an all-time high. They're only getting higher, and that Europe is actually warming faster than many other parts of the globe. And that's causing not only extreme heat waves of over 30 degrees, even 40 degrees and above in places like Italy, but also mixed with very little precipitation. You're seeing the worst drought in Italy, for example, in 70 years, where 100 cities in Italy have implemented water restrictions of various kinds. Water restrictions are also happening here in Germany. Spain, 2/3 of it is at risk of desertification. And we're seeing massive problems with heat exposure, of course, with, for younger people and healthy people, this might be a great time to go to the pool, go to the lake, enjoy the sunshine. But of course, if you have health issues, if you're older, this can be a major, major problem for people all around Europe that just are not accustomed to these kinds of temperatures.
How worried are people and officials about the extremes becoming more normal?
Very worried. We can only look back to the big heat wave in 2005. That's already 15 plus years ago, when tens of thousands of people across Europe died from extreme temperatures. And that is becoming more and more the norm. Now, we also see massive weather events and natural catastrophes, like what we saw in Italy earlier this week with a major glacier just falling off the face of a mountain and killing several hikers who were in the vicinity. And that was a combination of record high temperatures in that area at an elevation of more than 3,000 meters, which should normally be around freezing, was at 10 degrees Celsius. Combined with little precipitation over the winter meant little snow, which meant there was no layer to protect that glacier from the intense heat. And thus that led to the glacier falling. That is all a result of climate change. Now, this will all come at the cost of tens of millions, if not billions of euros to help agricultural sector, which of course uses a huge amount of water. But it's also coming at a time of rising food prices, of food crisis, things that more affect places in sub-Saharan Africa, places of Asia, but also hit people, especially of lower income levels around Europe quite a bit as well. So we're seeing a two-prong, a perfect storm here of just trying to get through the immediate causes, the immediate problems of food prices going through the roof and food shortages and energy shortages, while also looking towards long-term solutions towards climate change.
Talk to us about the solutions, for instance. What's on the table to mitigate the worst effects of these issues that are coming up?
Yeah. Well, of course, there is no quick solution. There is no silver bullet. Even if we were able to tomorrow turn off all of the gas and the oil and go right to renewable energy, we still have decades of carbon that everyone have put into the atmosphere that we have to deal with. And of course, there's supply chain issues of building all these windmills and building all these solar panels. One thing that's being discussed here in Germany is heat pumps. There is a massive move to install in tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of apartments and buildings all around Germany, heat pumps, which is a highly efficient way to warm homes. Basically, it reverse engineers the way a refrigerator works. Instead of pumping heat out of a place, it pumps heat into a place and uses electricity, not gas. If that electricity can come from green sources, then you're looking at a zero carbon way of heating homes at a mass scale. But again, this is all over the long term. At the same time, we're just trying here in Germany to get through the winter months ahead with the possibility of getting no gas from Russia and talk of restarting coal, restarting gas, rebuilding building new LNG ports here in Germany. While there's lots of promises among politicians to stick to the Paris Climate Accords and stick to long-term climate goals, these kinds of things, restarting coal and gas, building LNG, these are not for the short term. You don't just turn these things off when you don't want them anymore. These are also long-term commitments. And finding that balance is a major challenge for politicians and for public leaders going ahead.
William, thank you. When a 2021 baseline survey conducted in the Upper East region by Child Human Organization, Africates Ghana, revealed that some 39% of girls in basic schools believe that the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM programs and related fields were meant for males. The research also showed that 60% of the girls considered these subjects as their least favorable in class. However, a science, technology, engineering, and maths quiz program recently organized for some basic school students under the Africates Girls STEM project showed that the perspectives of the girls about these subjects are beginning to change due to the impact of the project. Correspondent Albert has more.
The Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics, or STEM quiz, was organized as part of the Girls STEM project being implemented by Africates Ghana. The aim of the Girls STEM project is to whip up girls' interest in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects and to guide more girls to choose careers in these fields. According to Country Director of Africates Ghana, David Pualua, a baseline survey was conducted before the project began in 2021. He said the results of the survey showed a clear lack of interest in girls towards the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects.
32% of girls that we spoke to strongly felt that STEM was a boys' thing. Again, only 39% of those that we spoke to had used a STEM equipment before. 60% of our girls mentioned that pre-tech, ICT, and mathematics are their worst subjects. Thanks to the collaboration collaboration efforts of Africa's Ghana and the Ghana Education Service in the delivery of GSTEM projects in your schools. The number of girls who will aspire to pursue science and technology related disciplines at the senior high and beyond shall increase.
Under the project, girls' STEM clubs have been set up in 20 selected basic schools in the Busa North District and the Bolgatanga municipality of the Upper East region. There are 25 girls in each club. The Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics Quiz program was organized for the selected schools, with 4 of them emerging as finalists. The schools were the St. John's and Yekine Junior High Schools from the Bolgatanga municipality, and then the St. Martin's and Afoko Junior High Schools from the Busa North District. Before the quiz, some of the schools presented science projects which they made based on how they could help solve basic problems in their communities.
It's like this. This is the air and this is water. So the air wants to come out, but the water is blocking it. So it has to get a counterpart, which is atmospheric pressure, to help push the water out before it can get out. So when I open the lung again, the water flows because it has its counterpart, which is pressure, to help it push, help push the water down. But as soon as I close it, because the air.
The schools then proceeded to answer some questions in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. At the end of the quiz, St. Martin's Junior High School emerged winners. Their contestants told JoyNews they no longer feel that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are tough subjects that should be feared by girls.
The difference I'm seeing is like I should not only learn only in the classroom, but I should learn other things outside, especially by doing research and getting my own ideas and be learning them. Not only what the teacher is teaching in the classroom, but I should also learn on my own. They always teach us in maths. Sometimes we do engineering, like making the platform which books can be kept on. Taking part in the process, I feel happy, and I can encourage more girls to join it because it has been helping us. So we've learned things that we didn't learn in normal classes.
According to Africa's Ghana, the Girls' STEM project will be extended to cover more schools in the 5 regions of northern Ghana. For JoyNews, Albert Sori, reporting from Bolgatanga.
And in Ghana, 1 out of every 5 children has a functional learning difficulty. This learning difficulty is more common in children aged 5 to 17. Many teachers also lack the ability and knowledge to identify such students in order to provide assistance to their pupils. This is according to findings by the Institute for Educational Planning and also administration at the University of Cape Coast. The research notes that the situation is a major contributor to falling educational standards and warrants an effective inclusive education policy. Samuel Mbura now reports.
The findings, which seek to identify challenges confronting inclusive education in Ghana, indicate that pupils with disabilities have consistently poorer learning outcomes in reading, writing, and maths than pupils without disabilities. Director General of the Institute for Educational Planning and Administration, Dr. Michael Boachi-Yadom, tells JoyNews the challenge needs urgent attention.
Generally, we realize that there seem to be many more children with disabilities, otherwise referred to as differently able students or learners than we thought. That is the first point. The second one is that there also appears to be a lot of misunderstanding, inadequate knowledge about the characteristics of these differently abled learners. We might have assumed that many teachers have a very good idea, good knowledge of who they are, how they operate, and how to support them. But what we are realizing is that knowledge on the kids and who they are, their characteristics, is limited.
The highest proportions of children with functional difficulties were found in Volta, Eastern and Upper West regions. Laura Leche Atache teaches at Kumbuni RC Basic School in Sogah of the North Tong District in the Volta region. She tells JoyNews that identifying learning disabilities among her pupils has been a major challenge in the classroom.
Sometimes it's very difficult, but as teachers we are trying our very best to identify at least the minor ones that we can identify and manage them appropriately. Sometimes the sitting position in classes also, it's one of the methods we use to help such people, especially those who have problems with maybe their eyes or the ears.
Peterson Kwesi also teaches at Aduto EP Basic School in the South Tong District. He wants the government to train and provide resources for inclusive education.
We are hoping that gradually these trainings will be done to equip us with necessary skills, knowledge, and some level of values that we can use in handling learners with disability.
But the least learning functional difficulties were reported from the Northern and Greater Accra regions. Edward Olenu of the Central Mosque School in the Greater Accra metropolis says the inability to identify learning disabilities is contributing to the falling standards in education.
No, the problem is that you cannot assess them. When you assess them and you have the results will inform you as to what to do next. But at their level, they cannot be assessed. And so sometimes we allow them to grow through the system just like that.
Meanwhile, principal researcher with IEPA at the University of Cape Coast, Professor Rosemary Sewa Bosu, believes adopting and implementing innovative adaptive teaching methods is one way of bridging the gap.
The world is changing, and globalization requires the world population to quickly adapt and learn to work with new technologies. So adapting and successfully implementing innovative, engaging, and adaptive pedagogies is one way that to achieve what the Action Area 2 of the Save Our Future paper talked about.
To achieve this for all marginalized populations, education systems must be examined and reviewed to ensure learning methods meet the needs of learners. Samuel Mbura reporting for JoyNews.
And Dr. Mabel T. Boydi of the Psychology Department at the University of Ghana has been addressing the inability of some teachers in identifying children with special needs in learning.
I'm not too surprised that we have difficulty identifying children with disabilities in Ghana. I think policymakers and the government itself knows about this limitation because we do not have the necessary assessment tools to be able to detect this. And then we do not have the knowledge. So that is what is causing the problem. We have some assessment centers that have been established in the country to, deal with these, but they are not in good shape in terms of they don't have the necessary resources, the cultural norm tools to be able to screen and identify these children and then be able to include them in the various classrooms.
Now, do you think that our inclusive education in the country is effective?
Okay, thank you. I can say that Ghana is making some strides in terms of our inclusive education. Generally in education, we're making some strides. And then in 2012, when we ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, since then we have made significant growth. And then in 2015, we introduced the inclusive education policy. However, and this policy basically seeks to ensure that there's equitable access to education, there's participation by all, and creates a friendly environment for even persons with disabilities, as part of mainstream classroom. However, it is beset with certain challenges that have made this success story to be a bit difficult to tell. And some of the challenges, listening to our other speakers, some of the challenges basically are the resources needed to make this inclusive education work. That is, if you decide that there are going to be there are no more going to be special schools, and that all children with disabilities are going to be parts of mainstream school, then you are ready to provide them with all the needed tools and resources to be able to feel part of the class in terms of, aids in studying when it comes to those who are having hearing difficulties, visual, those who cannot have communication difficulties and all. So all those should be provided with, and then that is what we are lacking. We lack the teaching and learning materials. They are insufficient. And then also we don't have teachers who are competent enough. I know there are training teachers in Cape Coast University, at Winneba. They are also, University of Education are also training teachers, but it seems not to be enough. More needs to be done to be able to get teachers who can even identify these children and support them.
And that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Don't forget to log on to myjoyonline.com. We have updates on our stories for you there. Next is Let's Talk Showbiz.